change my mind in projects all the time. Well, no, I wouldn't consider it a lie. I inferred that I might be building one out of aluminum, but I didn't make any promises or anything. Yeah, in my video on Sunday, I told them I was making an intake out of aluminum. What do they think of, some sort of Neanderthal? I'm making an intake out of aluminum. Oh my god. Yeah, I think a few people actually bought it. Yeah, well, we'll see. Well, that's quite a bit of progress for a Sunday. This is my idea. This is basically how it's going to be laid out. Spark Arrestor lid is going to sit on top of these perches. And what I'm probably going to do is make some custom aluminum fasteners. I'm going to thread the insides of these holes and use these as spacers and nuts. You can see there the lid is sitting on top of those spacers. And so the top of that spacer will be threaded out. I think that's pretty slick. And it is the next morning. The epoxy's hardened up and I've started to do a little bit of sanding. This is going to take several layers of epoxy. I need to fill in little voids and divots and stuff, like this one. And of course all this stuff on the top and this piece here. Yes. Oh man, it didn't hurt my plug. Awesome. Not that I'll probably ever use that plug for anything again, but that also probably means that my mold, man, this is by far the nicest mold I've ever made. It's gonna need very, very little cleanup. It's basically gonna need a wipe down, a waxing, and what I'm gonna do, just because I can, is actually sand along the edges to contour them a little bit. But man, look at that. That is a beautiful thing. It's now time to figure out how much epoxy I'm going to need, or how much epoxy I'm going to mix up. And so what I'm going to do is tear out the weight of this cup. And then I've got half of my carbon fiber stuffed into this cup because I can't fit all of it. So I put half of it in there. And now what I'm going to do is multiply that by 2, and that's how much epoxy that I will mix up. All right, folks, I've got 1 layer of carbon fiber into the mold. And I've had to come up with some creative ways of doing this, or a creative way of doing this. I tried to fit it in, and it just, yeah, the compound contours in through these areas just didn't allow for me to lay it down. And I didn't want to use a bunch of tack spray because, well, it probably would have made it harder actually. So what I did is I laid the piece of carbon cloth over here. I had to cut it out substantially bigger. And then I used the plug to actually push the carbon into place. I am running out of time extremely quickly. It is 3:40 p.m. on Saturday, and this is where I'm at. I've got the part bagged up and ready to infuse. Well, when I say ready to infuse, I'm waiting to see if it's going to hold a vacuum. The last time I checked it, it was leaking. Anytime you do a kind of odd profiled bag like this, you end up with wrinkles and stuff in the bag, and it's very hard to seal around these areas. So I've had leaks around both the inlet and the vacuum side of this. I tried to make this ring around the outside. This is where the epoxy is going to come in. I tried to make it so that this would be far enough out that the epoxy would actually get to the outer edges. And the reason why I need it to get to there is because the tack spray will release when the epoxy hits it. And there are spots in through the mold where if it doesn't release around the outside, it will end up with air pockets, I'm almost certain. So hoping that that's going to work for me. This is the epoxy that I'm going to be using. I don't know how this happened. I don't think I intended to get the 210 hardener. This is the fast hardener, which has about a half-hour pot life. And yeah, I don't think I would have purchased that on purpose. This is a very low viscosity epoxy, which is why I got it. I had some trouble infusing the bed plates and the ride plates. So it should work really well with this part because it's fairly small and I have lots of area for the epoxy to get in, but this does concern me somewhat. In an effort to get this video out on Sunday with a finished part, I rushed knowing that I shouldn't be rushing, and I overlooked some things or sidestepped some things that I know that I shouldn't have. I used a piece of bagging material that I had already cut out because it was close to the right size, but it wasn't quite big enough. I didn't test the epoxy that I was using. I'm using a new epoxy, the ProSet INF 114 with the 210 hardener. So that's new to me. I use new T-fitting, which I've never used before, and I had made the assumption that these T-fittings fit on this hose, or this tubing, and they do not. So the main issue that I had was I tried to heat the end of this up and fit it onto one of these, and I could get it on part way, and I thought, well, that'll be good enough. I'll get it on part way, and then I'll use some of the sealant tacky tape stuff. And I did the infusion and everything went fairly well, but then I put the part into the oven, and while I was putting the part into the oven, the hose for the inlet, the epoxy, actually popped off, and some of the epoxy got on the tacky stuff, which stopped it from sealing. So it got a bunch of air pulled into it, and then in order to seal it up, I actually had to cut the old stuff off and wrap a new piece around. So air leaked into the mold, not once, but twice after it was infused. So if the part turns out, I can't imagine that it will be very cosmetically pleasing. It is currently a little after 5 p.m. So yeah, I am out of time. I've got to let this cure up in the oven. I've got it in there at 54 Celsius, about 130 Fahrenheit. I'm gonna try to let it cure up, and yeah, hope that I have a usable part, but it's not looking good. This is what happens when you rush. Look at the mess. Look at the mess of my garage. Complete disaster. All right, this just happened. My catch cup inside of my catch tank went into thermal runaway just after I took it out. It melted the cup, actually burnt a hole through the side of the cup. I'm not gonna touch it because it'll probably stick to my fingers. Oh no, it's pretty solid on top. But yeah, it burnt through the side of the cup, and I don't know if you can see, there's actually smoke coming off of it. I'm gonna turn on my ventilation. It's probably not healthy. (290 Fahrenheit). That's what I'd call warm. I'm hoping that it turned out, but realistically, if it did, I will be really shocked. Come on, you son of a... There we go. Holy. Oh yeah. Big giant air pockets down here. Yeah. Giant air pockets, and not fail. Oh well. Not really oh well though. It's a lot of very expensive material, but it didn't work. Obviously, I didn't want to end this video on a fail, but it is what it is. This part is a fail. I would say overall, it's not a complete fail because I do have a reusable mold that's ready to go, so I can make another one of these. With a little bit more patience and a little less haste, I should be able to make another one of these successfully and show that to you guys at the start of the next video, hopefully. In the meantime, I am working on the cooling system, or rather on the water injection system for the exhaust. And now that I have this made, I can actually use it to test fit some of the other components. I was waiting to make this so that I can mount it in place and figure out where I'm going to put my water filter, and my pressure regulator. So now that I have this made, I'm not going to be afraid of damaging it or just test drilling holes in it to see, you know, maybe I'll try to mount this on top or on the end or something. Either way, I'm going to have to make another one, and you guys will hopefully see the successful one at the start of the next video. The next video is probably going to be about kind of tying up some loose ends on this, finishing off all of the exhaust cooling system stuff, and yeah, maybe starting to fit some electronics. I don't have a terribly busy week ahead of me as far as my work schedule goes, but it is getting into that time, so I'm not sure how much progress I'll make between now and my next video. But that is going to do it for this one. I hope you guys aren't too upset about my failure. I'm sure some of you think that this isn't a failure, but I assure you this part is not really usable. One other thing that I forgot to mention is that even though this is 2 millimeters thick through the walls, if I take my finger and my thumb and try to touch them through this area, and then I pull the part away, it's actually 3/4 of an inch between the inner surface and the outer surface. And that is because there is huge air pockets, and it is the same thing in all 3 corners. So dimensionally, this is not accurate on the inside. Let's try this again. I will see you guys in the next video. Wish me luck, and thanks for watching. See you next time.